This is Marna Weston in St. Augustine for the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program, and we're here to speak with Marie Veronica Warrior. And thank you so much for taking the time at the conference to come and speak with us.
Well, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much for asking. This is a great opportunity.
Well, would you mind spelling your full name?
Marie is capital M-A-R-I-E. Veronica is capital V-E-R-O-N-I-C-A. Warrior is capital W-A-R-R-I-O-R. Most people spell it with an E-R. No, it's I-O-R.
And where were you born?
I was born in Sanderson, Texas, which is a little bitty town up around Langtree, Texas, and close to Pecos.
Okay. Now, this is the tough part because you're stunning. You could be anywhere from 8 to 80. I'm going to ask you, what is the date of your birth?
Oh boy, do I have to tell that year? I don't mind telling you. I'm a Capricorn. I'm January 13th.
You only have to tell us what you want to tell us. But if people are listening 100 years from now, they might know, well,
that's
who is
true.
this stunning woman and
Well,
when was she born?
I'm proud to say I was born January 13th, 1946. And I am still working and doing everything that I'd like to do. Maybe not as fast and as quick, but I do get there. Thank you for letting me share that.
Who are your mother and father?
My mother is Ethel Hall Warrior, and my dad is William G., which stands for Glebe Warrior.
And do you recall their dates of birth, if not the year?
Oh, yes, yes. My mom's about to come up on a birthday now, and my dad just had one in March. Dad's birthday is March the 16th, 1927. My mom's is July 24th, 1927.
And do you know where they came from?
Oh, most definitely. They were born and raised in Brackettville, Texas. And most people know Brackettville, Texas because of the Seminole Indian Scouts and the 9th Cavalry there at Fort Clark.
Now, when you say most people know about that, it's fascinating that we're here at this conference that is to talk about the Gullah Geechee Nation people and the Seminole Nation people, but people might not know that story.
That's very true.
Of the Seminoles and those soldiers. Could you frame that story for us?
Well, basically, I can share with you what I know, growing from a child up to adulthood as now. My dad is the true historian, and I do apologize that I have not learned it until now that my dad is working it, and I've not always been around to keep up with it. This is my first opportunity to get involved with all that he's been doing. I've been to Washington, and I've gone through the Smithsonian, saw a lot of information in there about my family, and that's why I was so determined this time. I'm thinking of retiring soon, and I've got to pick up the gavel. So I better get my speedy shoes on, because really and truly, it started with a lot of our folks migrating out of Florida into Mexico, and a lot of the married Hispanic women over there lived there for a while, and then became Seminole Indian Scouts who fought for Texas.
So you feel an obligation to tell this story?
Oh, most definitely. I want to learn it before I can get there and really tell beyond my ages of being born. Yes, compelled to do so.
How do you describe yourself ethnically, and why do you do so?
Ethnicity, if I may state, covers a lot for me. It's not just about my background, but it's about my culture, my everyday thoughts about others, the environment in which I work, that I demand or command the need for diversity, also in the ways and understandings of other cultures. And in doing so, it makes me more aware of who I am and how much we are so much alike. You know, we may have different shades on the outside or hues, whichever you prefer, but inside we all bleed red blood, we all sleep, we all eat, we all have the same needs. So in saying so, to draw this to a conclusion, ethnicity to me goes across many cross lines. In fact, our background is, first of all, Black that you see, and then we have Hispanic, which comes on my mom's side as well as my dad's side. And then the Seminole Indian is always there, very closely, because that's the deepest rootings of the black part of me.
So you consider yourself a Black Seminole?
Black Seminole, American Black Seminole.
Mm-hmm. how did your family originally come to Florida?
Actually, to the best of my knowledge, because I will reiterate, my dad knows the history, they were trying to migrate during the slavery time because there were some folk who were not slaves. They were called freedmen, and they were there also realizing that once the slaves were freed, there was a time whereas the masters decided they needed them back to help till the farms, and they did not want to be slaves again, the many of them that came together. Now, I can't tell you the part where it all began and where they started from, but from Florida, they migrated into Mexico, hoping to rebuild and get their strength back, get their lives up, get their families going. But Texas government came in and offered them an opportunity to become Indian Scouts because the Seminoles were identified as very unique scouts. Therefore, they came to the United States in hopes to make a better life for their family and agreed to do so.
It's very interesting to hear this story because we're so familiar with the traditional story of the Underground Railroad, where people in the South fled to the north or went to Canada and escaped for freedom. And here's a story of people going to Texas, going west and originating in the South. That particular story, your family story, what do you think makes it so special and so unique?
Well, personally, to me, first and foremost, being a mixture of cultures has enlightened me and helped me to educate myself about who people are. Not what color they are or how they live or their status, but who they are. And in saying so, with what I call the Heinz 57, the Black, Seminole, Indian, and Hispanic, it's enabled me to not only learn their languages, now I can't speak Seminole, but to be able to communicate with others of other races, cultures, creeds, whatever you want to call it, and understand their way of living. And it identified a lot once I started learning more about the history from my dad with my life and some of my life's patterns. Because of the Hispanic, I would call it, quote unquote, penetration of our Seminole, American Seminole men that went into Mexico and married these women, and then they gave birth to children. This is where our descendants started, my family and some of the others. It enabled me to understand the people of that country and the way they live, so that when I do deal with people on a daily basis, I know a little bit about the culture, therefore I can help them a lot better, having been a part of that culture and having to live that part of that culture when I have to deal with my daily dealings. By me being a nurse, of course, I see it from the medical, health, science side of the house. But I've been able to pull all that info together. And this is something that's going to be ongoing for me. I'll take what I've learned under the Seminole heritage. I'll take what I've learned under the Hispanic heritage and put all that and concentrate it together with the Black. And hopefully those three cultures will enable me to do the same with the cultures that are migrating to the United States right now. We assume that every country lives and understands the way we are. And it's strictly an assumption that is a negative. You cannot pull people all together. You can't stereotype them because of what one person does in a culture. And this has really made my life a lot easier, having been not only growing up in school during the time that the schools were segregated, and then all of a sudden they integrated, and then having come from a triple background, I was able to become friends with others of other culture. I think it's great that we have the diversity that we have in the United States, which we call, quote unquote, the melting pot. Because if you have too much of a culture, I think people have a tendency to lose the facts about other people because you're so into I and my. And there's no big I and no little U's. And in my daily, as I stated before, it gives me great pleasure. I'm elated to be able to work with people of other ethnicities. I learned so much from them. Learning about my own showed me a lot about my past. And I say that because I've always been a very strong personality, very strong will, I guess the best way you can identify me is the Energizer Bunny. I'm usually on the go. I participate in my community wholeheartedly. I volunteer. I'm a veteran, and I know it sounds a little unique to some to say a female black woman going into the military, and particularly so at age 42. But through my dad's seeking and researching of our culture, I found that there was a me in the past who was military. Only female, but she was. And of course, family didn't want me to do it, but I'd wanted to do it since I was about 15 or 16. And fortunately, I think the Father above had more in store than I knew. I was able to do it even at age 42.
Did your language skills, and I'm saying this because I've had the chance to speak to you a little bit, so I know you speak a few languages. Have those helped you work cross-culturally with people? Yes.
Oh, yes. As I quote about our president, he says, go across the table, or, we're back and forth. It has enabled me to do a lot, not only in my field of nursing, but just one-on-one with other organizations, other groups, and very much so when people are in need. Knowing that I can speak Spanish and speak it to them has put them at ease. I learned Italian while I was in Italy, in charge of the only American base there at Aviano, Italy. And it was wonderful to be able to bring those partnerships together. Areas of the Italian culture that hadn't been brought in with the American base there, and vice versa. It got me, let me tell you, to open doors beyond anything that I'd even thought of before I left the United States. For example, I became very close to a family while I was there, and we traveled, meaning another friend that was military, to Croatia and Slovenia, and we were the only two blacks among 5,000 plus people, and they were wanting to take pictures of us as if we were celebrities or stars, and I was like, what are you doing with it? Well, we just hadn't seen any blacks in this area in your capacity doing the things you're doing. I really felt proud. So therefore, I used my mom and dad as someones that I highly, highly respect for giving me a strong foundation to move forward and knowing the cultures and where people have come from, enabling me to open the doors to others, where I could help somebody, maybe not for something I'm doing, but for their sake. I love it.
What kind of things took place in your life with your mom and dad? Examples, chores or lessons, things from your childhood, lessons you can attribute to them that have helped you become the person that you are now?
Oh, gosh. One of the things that they taught me early on was respect. Learn to respect others. Everybody doesn't think the same way you think. Therefore, don't be afraid to ask questions. The one thing my mom still says, and my daddy always supported it, you can be or do anything you want to do if you've got the determination and the commitment that you add to it. That has helped build my life as strong as it could possibly be. I had a dream of one day going in the military, begged him to sign papers for me to go in the Navy because I was coming out of high school at 16. Mom sitting next to him and grandmother right on the other side of me. When the Navy recruiter got there, guess what he said? Oh, he was so nice, such a gentleman to the lady. Come right on in, because I told her the only way you can catch them is when they're there at dinner time and we're all together. So she did. He invited her in, offered her dinner, and, well, yes, this is Veronica, my daughter, blah, 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 my family. How can I help you? And when she said Veronica wants to go in the military, God, it was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde instantly. And, of course, I was 16, very timid, not very outgoing. I was sitting there looking at him and thinking, oh, my God, don't leave. This man's going to kill me. But you know what his comment was to her that scared me more than anything? He said, no daughter of mine is going in this military. Well, I didn't get the opportunity until after I was married and getting a divorce. And I decided this is something I've always wanted to do, and I'm going to do it regardless of what the age is. So happens the government knew a little bit more than I did at that time. They were taking everyone up to age 58 in all branches. Little did we know, a year later we'd be in the Desert Storm, Desert Shield fight that we had. So the strong foundation for one, learning to learn from anyone, even if it's the wino on the corner. The one thing you can learn is he'll tell you, Don't do what I did to get in this situation. Learn how to deal with people. Give them an opportunity to show you who their character is. Don't assume. And that's one of the biggest things that they could actually teach me is a strong foundation. Because, of course, I'm 3 different cultures. So there was nothing I could learn any better than to learn not to assume and to respect people and their rights. Because if we all have an opinion, they're just like noses. Everybody's got one. It's what you do with it that serves your purpose as well as theirs.
I'd like to explore that foundation a little bit more by talking about your parents' parents. So we can start with your mother. Who were her mom and dad?
Now, my mom's mom was Mrs. Ida Mae Hall, which I understand had a bit of Cherokee because her family came out of Tennessee. I did not get to know my step-grandfather because he had passed on, by the time I got into the world.
Do you know
I
his
did
name?
get to know, yes, it was Daniel Hall, and I understand that he was in the 9th Cavalry. Don't know a lot about him. Got to know his sisters because they were still alive as I was growing up. And my mom's real dad was Sam July, and I saw him probably from age 5 to probably about age 17 before he passed away. Didn't get to see a lot of him because we lived in different towns. But oh God, I see him every day in my mom now that she's older. My dad being 85 and my mom 84, soon to turn 85 in July. It is really amazing to see how strong DNA walks the earth, if you may allow it, because I used to hear all the time, God, that girl's just like her daddy when I was growing up. And now it's just the reverse. God, she's got so much of her mom in, So going back to those grandparents, I learned a lot from them also. They were good, strong role models. It's a lot different what that generation did as to what my generation did and what I'm seeing my children do. I'm not only a grandmother, but I'm a great-grandmother. And it's amazing to see the computer age that, has come about. And my grandkids are showing me now about the iPads and iPods and the whatever these games are that they play. Facebook and Twitter and all this. And I'm saying, Graham's was lucky to see an electronic, not computer, but a typewriter, electric typewriter. Mm-hmm. So you can tell a lot of time has passed from the baby boomers to the Generation X.
Now, how about on your dad's side? What about his parents?
Now, on my dad's side, Carol Warrior, I did get to see a couple of times as a child before he died. I think I was about 9 or 10 when he passed away.
Carol with a C or?
C-A-R-O-L, Carol Warrior. Okay. He was the son of Carolina Warrior that you all will read about in our Seminole history. Didn't get to know any of those folks that were gone before I got here. But I saw my granddad a couple of times. I was raised really with the step-grandfather because his mother, Lavinia Johnson, and Johnson was married name. It came from Daniels. She was Lavinia Daniels. Had married Carol Warrior, and they moved up around Ozona and then out to Tucson area. And then later, when she married what I call Pop Frank, his name was Frank Johnson, she lived quite a while in Chicago, and then they moved back to San Antonio. Wasn't very long before she passed away, and then he followed. But I stayed with them shortly, very short time, going to business college. Enjoyed every minute of it. I think about that every time I ride through San Antonio. If I could turn back the hands of time and see some of these descendants, how interesting it would be.
Who is the oldest ancestor or relative that you have?
At this point in time?
Mm-hmm.
Well, my dad probably is on direct lineage because his brothers and sisters are gone now. Mm-hmm. And my mom has no brothers and sisters at this time. Okay. It would be my dad probably because even on his side of the family, he lost his sister in October. And she was 4 years older than he was. And she was very close, in that lineage of older Seminoles. Isola Raspberry. Her husband was from Arkansas. William Henry Raspberry. He's buried in the cemetery for Buffalo soldiers and military gosh, I can't think of the name of that cemetery right at this moment for that recall is not there. But we went to Missouri to that funeral, and they buried him. She was buried next to him.
You have brothers and sisters?
At this point in time, I have 2 half-sisters. I've met one of them one time, the other I've not met yet. I had a brother, Anthony Carroll Warrior, who is deceased now. And it's just me that's alive. So I'm the caretaker for my mom and dad.
You are smiling when you say that. You seem to take a great deal of enjoyment from it, or I don't want to characterize, but how do you feel about that?
I enjoy it, but you know, when you see them age, you never expect them to get to a point where they don't remember some things, or you have to help them through what their thoughts are, or they're in a lot of pain, and there's nothing that you can do. Your hands are tied because you understand that this is what comes with life. We're just like a car. It's brand new, and the more you drive it, the more years pass, it gets old, and after a while, it's not going to run. I don't look forward to those years that I don't have them. And I know that I've got to prepare myself for this. Now, it doesn't speak to I could not go before them, but I want to make sure if that does happen, that they're well taken care of when I'm gone. So, yes, I am so proud that they are here and married almost 68 years. That's a long time to look at the same person. But I'm very, very happy that God has given me that opportunity to be here, to see them turn 85. Oh, that's just a blessing. I mean, you know, even just speaking to you in general, we all know the good Lord gives you one set of parents that's original. That's original. The others are loners. And I've been fortunate to have mine loaned to me twice. My dad had to have a triple bypass and almost died. He later last year ended up with 2 stents in those grafts of that bypass. So he could have been gone both times. And just a month ago, yesterday, my mom ended up with open heart surgery and had to have a pacemaker. So it just lets you know that we're human. And there are things out there that can and cannot replace us. So yes, I may look a little weary in the statement, but the love is so deep in my heart that I just wish I could continue to extend their life and see them as lively and active as they're doing. Today, I am here because my dad's invitation, and due to his illness, I'm the caretaker because I didn't want him to get here and continue to have problems with his heart, and we're so far away.
So you're looking at helping your dad pass on this legacy of being
most definitely
Seminole and Black and these
Yes.
other ethnicities and combinations you've described.
Most
How do you determine who a Black Seminole is? This ethnicity you described, how is the membership of that group determined?
Well, I think it's based on heritage more so. In my age group, our baby boomers and on down, look at it that this was the lineage that we were born to. And we've got to carry that on and let people know that we were doing something great during that time, even though those descendants we did not know. But I was elated, I'll put it this way, to hear that my folks, if you don't mind me saying my folks, actually fought for Texas. And when I read about John Horace and Colonel Bullis and all those folks back then, it's amazing to hear the facts of my descendants who I had no idea about coming up in school. And to hear this now and to be able to learn this and hear all that my dad has to give, to be able to share that with my kids, to carry that legacy on. It's not just a blessing, but it's an opportunity that could have gotten sidetracked if somebody didn't take the time to document what they could for those of us following in their footsteps to learn about who you are and what makes your character the way it is.
Do your kids identify the same way you do?
Oh, most definitely. They're learning it just like I am. A little slower because that Generation X has so many things else that they do that they just don't have time. And that's why I apologize once again to say that I wish I'd taken the time early on in my years, like 25, 26, 27, 28, to begin with my dad with this instead of just starting now. And he's on the other end of the bridge because there's so much I've got to grasp in a very short time.
Could you tell about your children? What are their names? What are their ages?
Oh, sure. I have 3 children. I'm divorced. My oldest is April Dawn Benson, and she'd probably kill me, but I'm going to tell you, she's 48 years old. This past March, she and my dad are 4 days apart. I have a son that is Lee Benson, and he'll be 44 on the 22nd, which is day after tomorrow. And, day after tomorrow. And then I have a baby girl that was born 10 years later, Zena Onika, but I'm remarried. Her last name is Bird, B-Y-R-D, and she'll be 35, not married, no kids.
Do they have? Do the other 2 have children?
My son Lee has 4 boys. Mm-hmm. The first one was born on my birthday. Mm-hmm. I guess that was my birthday gift. Here, Mom. And he has 4 boys. They're still married. My daughter, the oldest, has 1 little girl, divorced when the baby was 4. And she's come past her Grammy being a little preemie and just finished her bachelor's and starting on her master's. And I said, could you please give me time to finish the next 4 courses I've got to finish that master's? Are you going to be passing me and helping me with homework? Mm-hmm. So I'm very proud to say that, yes, my dad's extension goes at least 5 generations right now behind him.
Mm-hmm. You're married for a second time. Could you tell me about your husband?
Well, I'm divorced.
Okay.
I'm divorced. I said, no more of this. I took the T-shirt off and I burned it. Not threw it away. I burned it. Now, that doesn't mean I may not do that one day. But I've been divorced so long, 1983, that I don't even worry about it anymore. You know, I feel like I've had better relationships without being married than I have, actually being married. I think coming up as a child, you look at marriage as this dream world, and then you find out there's reality. And you're not taught how to be parents. You do just like the parents before you do the best you can or whatever you're taught. Mm-hmm. Well, they don't teach you about marriage either, because you can read the book up on it, like the new book I just read, Toxic Men, Those That You Are Allergic To and Those That Would Be Allergic to You. It is
a great title.
Wonderful book to read. There are several others that follow it, like Toxic Relatives, Toxic Friends, Toxic Families, and stuff like that. But that book, Toxic Men, tells even the men what to stay away from. But yes, I'm not married again. And I won't say I won't do it, but the good Lord's going to tap me on the head and say, this is him, not me.
Well, your dad describes himself as the chieftain of the Seminoles in New Mexico and Texas. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there are different groups of Seminoles. There's Seminoles in Oklahoma, and Seminoles in Florida. What are, in your opinion, are the relationships between these different groups of Black Seminoles here in 2012?
What I have seen in the past, and that's probably within the past, I would say 5-6 years, because I came to a meeting for him in Oklahoma City. And that was the first that I'd been involved at all, just to even listen outside of him and family members back home. They're just like any other family, even though they're in different areas. Some have tried to come together, to work together toward a common goal. Others have engaged, but felt, in my opinion, that no, my tribe's going to be the one to take the rule and tell everybody else what to do. And it's no different from any other common group. Somebody in there wants to be the dictator, and somebody wants to be the ruler. And they're just like every other group. I think getting everyone that is under that Seminole heritage together, regardless of where you're from, and getting them to work toward a common goal is going to be a duty that we're all looking forward to, that one person that's going to be successful enough to get them to do it. Slowly but surely, what we're doing right now with your conferences and with your history archiving and putting it out there for us in the media is so important to make others aware, because there are others in the other tribes, just like I am, that really don't know a fourth of your history. And you're coming to know it by the media use that you're doing right now. And somebody that's still living that can pass that on.
Now, you've described a very rich tapestry, both now in our discussion in our previous talk between the interconnectedness of your ethnicity and cultural identity and the life you live and who you are. I'm curious if you've seen this play out between people who describe themselves as you do as Black Seminoles and people who describe themselves, more as Red Seminoles. The difference between the two. Are you familiar, or do you have an opinion on those relationships at all between the two groups?
I'm not familiar with that at all. Like I said, my parents have had more introduction and engagement in that than I have, simply because I'm usually working or out of town when they're traveling either to Washington or to Oklahoma, or even as much as down to Nacimiento, Mexico, because we have relatives in Nacimiento, Rositas, Aguacalientes, just deeper into Mexico from my dad's side, the Guerreros, which is warrior in Spanish. Because even with my mom's side, they're down around Rio Grande, Mexico, and that's Mendoza's in July. So when you see a lot of the Hispanics coming from those areas, quote unquote Hispanic, they're as dark as we are, kinky hair, but speak no English. It's very likely that they're part of this migration of Seminoles into Mexico, marrying the Hispanic women, and they're probably an extension. Many of those that I met a few years back, which we celebrate Seminole Day every year during the week of the 16th of September. And I find that more and more people are migrating into those reunions that we didn't know about. And simply because word of mouth is getting out there now. I'll share something with you that I think is very important. My mom fusses all the time about my dad making trips and doing this and getting involved out of concern, and it really bothers her that there's so many descendants now, my age and younger, that are not getting involved. And she says, look at you, you're 85 years old, and you're doing all this hard work when there's these young folk who are educated beyond the means that we had the opportunity to get, and they're not even trying. And I told her just last night, I said, well, Mom, you know what? This is his desire in life. He wants to leave. This is his legacy. And if something that he's done can help someone else or someone's else, then I think when he lays his head down to go home with the good Lord, he'll be happy. I said, we all should leave a positive legacy. Sometimes you can't wait on the other fellow to get up and say, I'll help you. You just got to go do what you need to do, get it done. And I think that's basically where he is. He's 85. Yes, his health may not be that well, but he doesn't care. It's if I have to be a little sick, I'll take my daughter with me in case something happens, but I'm going to keep on pushing, try to get this information out there, make people aware of what's going on.
Well, you're doing a great job. He's surprisingly vibrant, and sitting next to him, having that meal, I'd have never guessed. I was truly shocked when he said he was 85, wasn't I?
Oh, yeah. I've had people tell me even yesterday, I'm surprised he's what? And we've had a few people a few years back tell him he looks like Richard Roundtree. And I said, no, don't tell him that. His cap is not fitting right now.
I see it a little bit, though.
Yeah. And I said, if you'd seen him a few years ago. But I'm just thankful to God that he's still able to do it.
You've talked about how you're learning the history of your family more and the importance of this legacy. Do you recall, or have you learned yet, how your family first found out about freedom, how it gained, how your family gained its freedom?
Pretty much as I know. My dad's listened to the old Seminoles that have passed on, but it made him more interested in what they were talking about, because a lot of things that the elderly tell you, they couldn't remember the details or why. So if there was something in a sentence that he picked out, he'd go and research it. He made a trip back in 1971 to the Smithsonian, and I think that's where it all began. He became more and more curious, and then he started questioning the families and extensions of those families that were still living and around, like my Aunt Emily Wilson, who taught school for many, many years and went back and got her PhD and would get accolades such as Woman of the Year, traveled around the world. Never married, never had kids, but she'd share so much about both sides, my mom and my dad's family, that everything she's done, she's passed down to my dad's generation and hopefully some to me.
So this is how stories about slavery and
right,
the Seminoles were
right.
discussing your family.
Those groups that were slaves, those groups that were not slaves, and how they came to be together, you know. And it's interesting to hear. And they could go on, and there's not enough hours. 24 would not even begin to put the icing on the cake.
What is your knowledge of the Underground Railroad? That's one of the themes of this conference.
It surely is. I'm here to learn more about that because the extension that we've gotten is what was written in the history books with Harriet Tubman and all the people.
So that's how you
learned
about it from school?
Yeah, that's basically what we got from school. We'd never heard this side of the story.
So your family didn't discuss the Underground Railroad as you grew up?
No, they didn't discuss anything about that except what we studied in school and helping you with homework on that. And as we grew and got more in depth into our studies, there would be times that my dad would say, you know, that name sounds familiar. I think that person had something to do with some of our family members. They may not have all been in the same tribes, but, you know, families were split out due to slavery so many times that many times the husband may be sent somewhere to someone's farm and the wife may go somewhere else. And then if the children were teenagers and able to work and toil the fields and stuff, they may be somewhere else. So trying to pull the families together and connect the names, dates, and times when people were in certain areas, it has finally started beginning to put the pieces to the pie together. So many of them, I'm quite sure, may have been part of that Underground Railroad. I don't have any idea about that. That was a little young for me.
Did you have chores growing up?
Did I have? I beg your pardon?
Did you have chores when you grew up?
Oh, most definitely. I can give you a synopsis of how we were raised. We woke up in the morning. There was only one car in the family. We had extended family that lived with us, extended family that we lived with. My grandmother, my mother's mother, couldn't read and write, so she lived with us, my mom, dad, and my grandmother. Then my aunt got very sick, her oldest sister, and had 2 kids. She was divorced. She came to live with us. And, of course, when you have that many people, my aunt had my son, her son, which is my first cousin, and her daughter, which is my first cousin. And then it was me. By my mom and dad, well, that was 3 children in the house. So when mom and dad was working, my grandmother wasn't able to work. My aunt worked sometimes part-time if she could. She was very sickly many of her years. But the kids got out of bed, you got ready for school, you had breakfast, oatmeal. I hate it till this day and just recently started learning since McDonald's put fruit in it to eat it again. I hated it. And they don't put milk in theirs, thank God. But the thing about it is we got up, ate breakfast, and we headed out for school, walking. And we did it until I graduated as a senior. It wasn't about buying you a car or parents picked you up and dropped you off. That was not even in the picture. If it was raining, you walked to school. You walked back for lunch, and you walked back in time for the afternoon classes. And when you came in the evening, you had chores to do. And we didn't play around along the streets going home. You went home because there was a certain time you had to get that done and then get homework. And then if there was time left after dinner, you could go out and play. And many times where our time is now, kids didn't pay any attention to daylight time or this was a winter semester, etc. All they knew is I'm at home and I want to play. So therefore, we had those chores to do before you went to bed. And if you didn't get to go out and play, you just told your friends, I'm sorry, we've got things to do. And by that time, it was dinner time, you take a bath and go to bed.
What kind of things were you doing? What were your chores?
Well, you had to take out the trash. You learned to wash and iron. And oh my God, on Saturdays, you see this carpet, it was some thicker than that. We'd have to pull it up, with my grandmother, take it out and help get it on the clothesline, which was considered, clothesline. And that old carpet got watered down with soap and water, and you help wash it to keep, things clean. We didn't have steam cleaners to come in, and do that. Some of the others were, after dinner, you wash dishes, and somebody else dried. And, of course, you had old pan this big, like a large basin, you washed in. So you had a tea kettle that you went to the faucet and got water and put it on the stove and let it whistle, and you knew it was hot.
Where'd you get your water from?
Well, we had a faucet, and it was natural city water running under the ground. It wasn't like we had a well, which I wish we had because that's the best water in the world. But we'd boil the water on the stove, wash dishes, take a bath, etc. number 3 tubs. Everybody had to take a bath, so whoever was last washed the ring out and cleaned the tub for the next person. And I guarantee you we had a washboard. I wish I could find one as a collector's item now. A good one, not one that's broken and destroyed. But you not only took out the trash, washed and dried dishes, but if there were other chores, as washing and ironing, we cooked and made our own starch. And sometimes those pants would be so stiff you couldn't beat a bat inside of them to get it open to iron even. We had what we call a smoothing iron. You set it on the stove or fire, and then you ironed with it. And I still have some smoothing irons. Those things, I tell you, it's something you could never find in its original form that would really make you go back to home. And a lot of times grandmother had to keep you when mom and dad was working if you weren't in school. Or the aunt would keep you. And that's how we were raised. And whatever that neighbor told you to not do, or you better go do, you did it. You didn't say, well, you're not my mom or you're not in my family. You did it, because if that lady or gentleman told those parents, you not only died once, but you died 3 times. Because by the time mom got through with you, she's going to tell dad as soon as he walked in the door, and he's going to start all over again. So, we had good times as kids. We just didn't know how fortunate we were. Many times we'd, what we call walk in the evening, go visit other neighbors. You didn't even have to lock your door. Leave your windows up. You could go wherever you were going walking. Didn't worry about a city bus, because who could afford one? And back then, you didn't see them. You didn't see home phones. You had to go borrow or use somebody's phone, whoever had one. Say, can I give you 15 cents? We need to make a phone call to so-and-so and so. And it was interesting to see the payphones come to be. And then all of a sudden now they're not even needed anymore, because we've gone to cellular phones, and I mean all kinds. I thought it was great when you could be paged, not knowing the technology that we're going to come to. And we didn't see a radio or TV for many years. I can remember the one radio my grandmother had. Her brother, who came to live with us also, Uncle Ralph White, used to love to hear the fights. So us being kids, we had to get quiet. So we heard the fight too. And all these stories, like Mr. Cordelius on the screeching door and the edge of night, and even, I can't think of the guy's name that turns into a vampire now. He's back. They've got that program back on. That Dark Shadows. That's it.
Barnabas Collins.
That's it. And I can still remember the commercial where the little boy said, Philip Morris Radio. That was regarding cigarettes, Lucky Strikes or something. And back then, Camel cigarettes were the big deal. So people would get ready to throw them away and say, would you like to have this? If you can find the camel in the picture and the man riding it. And of course, kids were so curious. Every bag we found, we'd be trying to find that package. Those were good days. We weren't worried about the drugs and drug cartels, and it was innocent. Kids could stay out and play to midnight and never have to worry about anybody harming them. It's just a scary world we live in now, to see how the 2 most innocent groups in our society are hurt and become victims so much, childhood and seniors.
I'd like to throw out just a couple of concepts for you, and you
Sure.
can respond in short or in part as we wrap up.
Sure.
The drug war in Mexico, 50,000 people killed since 2006, recently reported. What are your thoughts about that?
It's very sad to hear, because it may be heard on TV, but it doesn't really shock you enough to understand that everybody needs to be protected, regardless of what country they're in. And I say that because, like I say, we are more alike than we are not alike. And whether you're in this country or not, as the Bible states, we are our brother's keepers. I'm very upset with what's going on with the drug cartels, because it is wounding every generation. And the destruction that it's putting up on people, medical society cannot reverse. I feel like just as we've gone to war for Afghanistan, Kuwait, Iraq, etc., down the line, Korean, World War I and II, Vietnam, we need to come together with forces against these drug cartels the same way. Wipe it out. Make it non-existent, unless it's for a medical reason. just as we discussed the marijuana for medicinal. I said, I'm all for it. I've seen these patients in combat that come back to us. I've seen the PTSD. And by the way, it didn't just start with veterans. Our grandparents used to call it shell shock. It's been around a long time, and they're not the only ones that have it. But there are times where those medications are appropriate for what it needs to do. Not on the street and not like these drug cartels. They limit a lot for innocent people. I'm very upset at the numbers. That's almost as many as we lose in some of our wars.
Your parents' reaction, or how you feel about how your parents' thoughts on the 2008 election of Barack Obama and his current re-election campaign.
I'm very happy to say that even my descendants, my grandmothers and great-grandmothers that I did get to see, and grandfathers are included in that too, would have loved to have been here to see that. That is a mark in history that I will never forget. I don't get in one side of it as Republicans or Democrats or independents. I'm about what is right. I don't care what party you come from. It's about what is right and for the people, the good of the whole. And I feel that our president is there to do that. It's just that he inherited a lot for whatever reason. I don't blame anybody. It may have been what was said that it was going to be in our time. The good Lord knows the will of what's going to be before we do. It's just that it's going to take some time to clean up our nation, and it's going to take all of us coming together. When we were in the military, I guarantee you, none of us looked at color, because when you're out there in that demilitarized zone and you don't know whether you're going to breathe the next 5 minutes, but you've got a buddy here you're fighting beside, and that buddy you love because that's the only family you have to connect with. Why can't we do that now? As sad as it is to see what happened in California with the riots with Rodney King, I will quote him as saying, why can't we just all get along?
Marie Veronica Warrior, I want to thank you so much on behalf of the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program and our African American History Project to have this discussion with you at this wonderful conference. I hope that we get a chance to speak again. There may be that opportunity. There was so much we didn't discuss. Your history of the military, your early education, some more things. It's such a rich and vibrant and full life. It's hard to get it all in a short amount of time. But you do have our thanks. And it's sort of a tradition in these interviews for me to, with that thanks, ask you to make any final comment that you might want to. And these will be my last remarks. Your closing comments will be the conclusion of the interview.
Well, thank you both and the University of Florida for having me. This has really been an opportunity that was not even expected and didn't know was going to happen. And I pray and hope that those that will look at this will take the time out to go research just a little bit of the information, because I can go by what somebody says, but it's going to stick much stronger in my mind if I read it with my own two eyes. See, it's the reason God gave us 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth, so we could listen and learn. So hopefully those that watch this, they're going to be listening and learning, and will take the time to say, hey, let me pick up the gavel and share with her in getting this information out, and all others to come that do that. Thank you once again for having me. It's been an opportunity. Bless you.